But tell me, Kat, about Winchester House.
Yeah, I got you. So the film Rose Red, as Gabe said, was based off of the Winchester House, which is a real house that may or may not have actually been haunted, and is in California currently. It still exists,
Mhm.
still chilling there. People can go see it. You can get married there if you want. Um, uh, but I don't know if it's haunted. So the story goes as follows: Sarah Winchester, married to William Wirt Winchester in 1862, gets struck down by tragedy when her only child, Annie, died in infancy in 1866.
Mm.
As the years passed, William became the owner of Winchester Repeating Arms Company, which happened in 1880. But then the next year, he died from tuberculosis. And Sarah,
Oh.
as like in response to his death, took the position of like the head of the company. But she essentially got
Mhm.
edged out by her brother-in-law, and as a result, moved very far away from where they were because they were in like New Haven, Connecticut. Um,
Mhm.
and she moved west after inheriting a massive fortune. So Sarah moved to the place where the Winchester rifle made the most damage and impact. With that $20 million inheritance, she bought a house and began seemingly endless construction in a nonsensical and chaotic fashion through some of it. So just some fun facts about the mansion. The Winchester Mansion stretches across 24,000 square feet with 160 rooms, 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors,
Jeez.
52 skylights, 47 stairways and fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. She didn't get that many. Um,
And who lives there? Like, just her? Like, what?
I don't know, man. But from 1886 to 1922, Sarah commissioned construction almost consistently with no blueprint and seemingly like no,
Blueprint.
yeah,
That's the
no
word.
blueprint. Yeah, no blueprint and seemingly no plan.
Mhm.
The original house, as I said, was an 8-room farmhouse that expanded exponentially. First, Sarah built up, creating about 7 stories, but following an earthquake in 1906, 3 stories had collapsed down onto the rest of the house, damaging a lot of it and its structure, and ended up trapping Sarah in the attic of the mansion for a period of
Oh my
time.
god, she wasn't messed up enough.
Yeah, so that was traumatic for sure. And they actually discovered the attic recently. Like it was recently that they discovered the attic where she was trapped, that it was hidden
Mm.
on one of the stairways that go to nowhere. Um, So after that, Sarah built out instead of up, as there are a result of. People say it's a trick ghost. I think it's because half the house fell, so they instead
Mhm.
of just building a whole new house now, they just put stuff on top of it. They like put caps on the stairways because there's the house that the stairs went to no longer exists.
Mhm.
The doors
So it goes to
probably went to
nowhere.
different sections of the house, but now those rooms don't exist because they fell off the house in the earthquake. So now they just go to the yard, like you just walk off the roof and you're on the floor now. Um, but yeah, so essentially she built out instead of up now. And the result of this is stairs that go to nowhere, chimneys that don't go outside, balconies on the inside, rooms built inside of rooms, and doors with nothing behind them. Um, yeah,
It's
it's
wild.
it's really wild. And the house was built at a price tag of $5 million in 1923, or 71 million today.
Mm.
Um, some neat
That's actually
features.
less than I thought.
Yeah, it's a little bit less for sure. I don't think she could have solved all of society's problems, but I do have some opinions about the way she spent her money. Um, so there's just some neat features in the house, which I thought were cool, and like are pretty inventive, and probably could be used to help people. So there were cornerless steps in rooms that made dusting unnecessary. So it was a giant house. You don't want to have to dust it all the time. So she invented this thing where you put little corners in there to block the dust from getting caught. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they
Um,
didn't have Roombas.
yes, they did not have Roombas. And she has so many steps. How is the Roomba going to survive all the
That's
steps?
true.
So And also, she made tiny steps to accommodate her arthritis, so, like, steps that were really small and close together, and then only had really, like, small, like, inch or 2 high steps so that she could
Mm.
go up steps easier without having to, like,
Mhm.
impact her arthritis. She also made a unique kind of shower that would accommodate that, and some other features that were just interesting other than, like, the accessibility features that I just thought were cool. She had a seance room,
Ooh.
which is just like I think that in a way also contributed to the lore of
But
the
that was
guild
also hip.
time.
That was in vogue at the
Yeah,
time,
in vogue
having
at the time, and
seances.
she was with much money, so she has to be in vogue, you know? She has to
Mhm.
be real fashionable. Uh, but another fun thing is that in the seance room, there's like a closet that leads to like a 7-foot drop into the kitchen. That was something, it was something like that. That you're like, what? And then there's just a bunch of other closets that are secretly and cabinets that are like secretly doors to other rooms. So it was
Mhm.
also pretty neat. So I
Yeah.
found an article on grunge.com titled The Untold Truths of the Winchester Mystery House. And they had some things to say about what the seance room was and also like the kind of like the mystery behind it and the theories surrounding like what actually happened in there. So the seance room or the blue room only had one entrance but three exits, including a door that leads to a 10-foot drop. I was wrong, a 10-foot drop into the kitchen and another that opens up into a small sink.
Okay.
According to popular lore, Sarah Winchester retreated to the room every night between midnight and 2 a.m., and no one
Word.
else was allowed in. What went on in there, no one was sure, but everyone had a story. According to one tale, Winchester went there to commune with spirits and learn what they wanted her workmen to build the next day. Others say she was reaching out to those who had met the grisly end at the barrel of the Winchester rifle, while still others say she spent just time talking to her husband. The research done by Anna Lee Newitz suggests something totally different, that perhaps Winchester was really just using those hours to spy on her help with a series of hidden windows. There's also a possibility that Winchester believed in spirits and used her time to figure out how to invite the good spirits in and keep the bad ones out. But decades later, no one really knows what went wrong, what went on in that room for 2 hours every night. So it's still a mystery, but it is interesting. So why did Sarah build this house, this giant crazy house? The lore states that's because of the mass loss of life associated with the Winchester rifle, and that the Winchester family became cursed because of the intense number of lives lost to them. The belief of the public in response to these actions of the widowed Sarah Winchester was that Sarah believed the curse is what took her child and her husband and would eventually take her as well. After moving west, Sarah purchased land and property and built this chaotic maze and filled with interesting architecture as a way to confuse and escape from the many ghosts that haunted her and to escape from the guilt she felt associated with the loss of life from the Winchester rifle. So, why is the Winchester rifle important? Um, it was the first of its kind, I believe. I don't know a ton about guns, but what the Google
Mhm.
told me that the Winchester rifle was an improvised or an improvement upon the Henry rifle, as it could shoot multiple shots before having to be reloaded, which was a big deal because before you had to like reload after every shot, or
Mhm.
it would just take a really long time to reload in between, and it would be dangerous if you were in war or
Mhm. Now you're vulnerable.
genociding, you know, to have
Mhm.
the option of someone attacking you. So these rifles were very useful for the time in expanding west and was considered the gun that won the West. And it's also considered like the thing that guaranteed American expansion west, as well as the mass murder of indigenous populations in the process. Um,
Mhm.
so it did a lot of damage, specifically in the American Indian War, as well as just like colonization.
Yeah.
So
It's fitting that Rose Red was on an indigenous burial ground then.
yes, in that
Mhm.
way, yes.
Yes.
But it's essentially what large. It's theorized that the creation of the Winchester rifle is what started to really continue to spur this obsession with firearms in America, uh,
Mm.
and the development of the like want for the increased capacity for like automatic weapons, multiple shot weapons. Like there was something that came from this that gave people power and
Mhm.
spurred capitalism in a way that allowed for this woman to build a $72 million house. And people liked it. They liked the guns.
Mhm.
And as we know, we're in 2022 and they still do. They still like the guns. Um, do I think this rich lady in her giant mansion cared about or felt guilty for the mass loss of life associated with the rifle that financed her livelihood? No. I think a rich lady that had too much money was bored and didn't care about any loss of life, maybe other than like her immediate family that she probably cared about. So she blew all her money on this chaos mansion instead of actually helping anybody other than herself.
Snaps.
Yeah. The more likely reality is that the story surrounding this was that the public felt guilt over the mass loss of life associated with the rifle. But instead of like processing that and demanding change, they distracted themselves and enjoyed the idea that this rich and powerful woman that was associated with these deaths felt remorse, had suffered in some
Mhm.
way, and therefore they no longer had to. Uh, the public felt that blaming the entirety of that loss of life on this one person, and doing so, they could absolve themselves from the fact that they used that rifle to murder lots of people.
Mhm.
Um,
Entire
very
communities.
Christianity of them.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not the only person who thinks this. There's actually an entire article surrounding this idea about the Winchester Mansion and how what it represents is just oh so American. In an article on Vice.com titled "The Scariest Part of the Winchester Mansion Has Nothing to Do with Ghosts," written by Becky uh, Ferreira. I don't know how to say words. They explain that with over
720.
yeah, it's a bunch. With over
Yeah.
720,000 rifles produced between 1873 and 1916, the sheer ubiquity of the Winchester rifles had a profound impact on American history. Not only did this family company help to foster the zealous gun culture endemic to the United States, but it resulted in an untold number of deaths. The culture surrounding guns is the one that we're very familiar with, as I said, in 2022, with the threat of a shooting ever present every single time you step outside.
It's
Weapons have,
crazy because talking
yeah,
about this, I just got a shooting alert at Temple, so,
yeah,
yes.
literally all the time, constant.
Mhm.
So weapons have continued to increase their capacity for murder, and it started with the Winchester rifle. This desire to create more dangerous guns,
Mhm.
and the results have been the creation of AR-15s and other automatic weapons that do big damage really fast.
Yeah.
And the legacy of the Winchester rifle lives on and haunts us as an entire country, not just this little house. That's actually quite big, but like comparatively to like the entire
Mhm.
entire country, it's a little small.
Mhm.
So the article continues to say that Mary Jo Ingolfo, author of the 2010 biography "Captive of the Labyrinth," specifically referring to the time when Sarah Winchester was trapped in the attic,
Mm.
they suggest that news outlets scapegoated the wealthy widow to relieve collective American guilt about the proliferation of deadly firearms. Towards the end of the 19th century, the American press began to seriously acknowledge the brutality used against American Indians, and the American conscience began to be bothered by the atrocities. Ingolfo points out in the book, Sarah Winchester's reputation suffered scathing attacks of insults and ridicule beginning at the same time. Newspapers pinned the burden of guilt on for Winchester induced deaths on the widow, but there's literally no evidence that Sarah herself felt guilty about the repeating rifle or earning money from it. Um, so the takeaway here is that people need to stop creating the narrative that rich people feel anything about how
Mhm.
they got their wealth or about anything that people who suffer as a result go through. They're not these like pillars of morality, nor do they use their funds to make lasting and meaningful change. The rich in this country could, including our government, which they proved in the pandemic, they can just give people money whenever they want.
Mhm.
And they just choose not to. So essentially, they could end hunger, homelessness. This woman could have put money towards removing these rifles, what is the word? Piloting for gun control. Like she could have done a
Mhm.
lot of things with this money if she actually felt guilty. And I think that is entirely a societal construct because if she wanted to, she could have. She actively
Mhm.
chose not to. Just as now, people actively choose to do nothing, specifically the
Mhm.
ones who actually have the financial means to do so. The article continues that the Winchester Mansion is not only a crucial part of this history, the Winchester Mansion is not only a crucial part of this history, it is a perfect metaphor for the nation's singular obsession with guns. Sarah Winchester's compulsion to randomly build new wings and floors with no master plan mirrors America's half hearted band aids on gun policy, which have never accounted to a cohesive vision. Like the doors and passageways within the Mystery House, attempts to reduce gun violence in the United States often lead nowhere or circle back on themselves. This metaphor, honestly, could be applied to literally every facet of Americans' oppressive systems,
Mhm.
in that the people who are making these decisions, who have the money, are not building systems that help anyone. It's if anything, it's also like an analogy for the American dream.
Mhm.
And it was just very funny. I remember
They're all
people
just 10-foot drops into the kitchen.
exactly like, or they just like lead. You think you're going to the bathroom, and now you've fallen off the roof. So it's
American
honestly
dream.
it's the American dream. Like if you really think about it, okay, there's all these things. I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's like, okay, like for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
think about it. All I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay. So there's all these systems that like make you think that like that's the way out of poverty or
Yeah.
these bad
Yeah.
situations, etc. The American dream. Work hard, whatever. There's all these systems in place that you just have to jump through these hoops and loopholes to get the thing, play the lottery, do this, do that, go to college, pay off those loans if you can. You can't.
Yeah.
All these
Yeah.
other things, like these things that are suggested as ways that you gain success, wealth, etc., are not actually ways to do so. There are doorways that lead to a 10-foot drop into the kitchen, to right off the roof, like
To up
stairways
into
that
a
go to
sink.
nowhere. Yeah, you go through the stairwell, you've been walking up like 5 stories and you're finally at the top and you're like, I've worked so hard to get here. And then you look up and there's just nothing. There's just roof. There's just roof. There's nowhere to
Mhm.
go from here. So I was like, I was talking to you, Gabe, when I was watching the documentary about it. And it was like, this guy was like, this house is a perfect representation of America and all of its possibilities. And I'm like, sir, you have just missed the entire point.
Yeah.
This house
Yeah.
is about the lack of like imagine if this woman, not that it's her in alone responsibility to solve all the world's problems, but like imagine if she just tried, like
Yeah.
a little
Even just
sprinkle
a
of try,
little.
uh the things she
Just
could have
host a
done.
banquet in her magical house that, does
House
something.
homeless people. House
Yeah. Why do
people.
you have
You
6
have giant
kitchens?
house. Why do you need 6 kitchens? Use those kitchens to feed people. I don't know. It's just really
Yeah.
wild.
That's insane.
It's like the strikes where
Doesn't
you're
make any
like,
sense.
they just want to see their families and they're like, we need to get them to stop striking. Then give them what they want. Let them
Let them see
see
their
their
families.
families, guys. Like what?
Yeah.
Why? Ultimately, the house is a perfect metaphor for America if you ever were looking for one. So ultimately, do I think she felt guilty? No. Do I think this house is haunted? No. It just sounds like a lot of people getting really excited over rich people and assuming that they're these pillars of doing things for a good reason. Well, she did it for no reasons because she was bored. She wanted to spend the money because she didn't want her brother-in-law to get it because he stole her
Mhm.
company and she wanted to be petty.
Yeah, and
That's
she's
all it
lonely.
was.
She ain't got
She
nothing
made
else
this
to
cool
do.
house nice. But like,
She
could
couldn't
she have
have any
done
other hobby.
or
Yeah.
like get rid of it now? Why are we just
Yeah.
keeping this house? She's dead. Give the house away.
Yeah, or like, yeah, don't have it be just like a tour place. Can we make
Yeah.
can we house people? Can people live
Yeah.
here
Or
and
just knock it
give
down,
us all these
start
rooms?
fresh. Why we need this house? We don't. There's tons of cool stuff in there. Take the stuff out, put it in a museum, I guess. I don't know. If you like it that much, do something with it. Put all that stained glass in other houses. Why do they need to
Yes.
sit like propelled in this giant house that no one lives in? It's stupid. That's how I
Yeah.
feel.
I agree. I
And
agree.
yeah, it's not
And
haunted. No one's died there except for her.
mhm.
That's it.
Yeah. I will say in Riz Red, Steve, who is the only living relative of the Rimbauers and like inheriting this house, after the psychic time, he
Mhm.
had planned to demolish Rose Red. He's
Heck
gonna
yeah.
flatten it.
Do
And
it.
Doctor the psychology professor, Dr. Reardon, is like, what do you have against this house? And he's like, it eats my relatives. It's like, did you forget that?
Yeah,
Like,
like, kill the house, it's fine.
everyone is dead. It's done nothing good.
Like,
It does
stop
zero
get
good.
exactly, like, stop giving this blood money house your money. Don't get married there. Like, go do something else. Knock it down, burn it down. I don't know, do something. I didn't
Yeah.
say that for the record. I didn't say that, but also,
But also,
just,
use
like,
your
do something
money
with it.
better.
Do something with it. Or
So
stop, like,
stupid.
waiting for the rich people to fix everything, 'cause they're not. They're not. They could already. They could have done it this whole time, and they're just like, "Eh,
I'm
I
gonna
don't
make a
care."
penis rocket and
Yeah,
go to
why?
space.
I need to go to space for some reason. Like, stop thinking that they know what they're doing. They do it for a reason. They don't. They're just bored. And
Hmm.
we don't murder them, so they're bored.
Total aside. Um, just like cool old timey architecture things
Yeah.
is when you're talking about her spying on her help through mirror, the windows that are hidden. I went on a bus tour throughout Philadelphia, and in Old City, on the third floors, you can see outside the window. There's these like mirror contraptions, and it's because if you were up at the top floor and someone like rang your bell or knocked on your door, you can just peek out and look at the mirror and it would reflect what was happening on the ground floor. So if you knew it was worth your time to go all the way downstairs.
That's
So it
hilarious.
was like the first ring, you know?
Yeah.
First like door video system. It's so
Yeah.
funny where someone's just like, oh, it's just the mailman. Or,
Yeah.
oh, it's just that
That's
pesky
so
neighbor. I'm not going to
funny.
come down.
That's
So
so
that was just a
funny.
fun, like old timey architecture thing. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and like
Counter
innovative.
argue it to murder. Just hold them accountable. I
Yeah.
didn't want to leave on murder. I don't want to end on murder. You
Yeah.
know, hold them
Yes.
accountable. Sue them.
Tell them they're not allowed to have this money.
Take their money
You're not allowed
away.
to have this money. You cannot profit off the death of entire communities
Unless you
and
just had too much. Why you need that
races.
much? For why?
You don't. Like, clearly, you're not doing anything with it. You're making
Yeah.
fake doors.
Fake
Like,
doors that go nowhere.
you're making incomplete chimneys. Like, that just seems toxic. I don't know what you're I
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing. Rose Red had some cool things where there was, like, an upside down room or and, like, places where it's like there was a door, but it wasn't really a door, and, like, the wall was actually the door. So,
Mhm.
I'm sure that was influenced by that.
Yeah.
And that stuff was cool, like, and they had this whole thing, but I was just like, "But what is this? How like, this at least it makes sense that no one's in this house because it's eating people." But,
Yeah.
like, Winchester House isn't eating anyone.
Yeah. It's
You
doing
just
nothing.
get a
It's just
little
sitting there.
lost.
You can pay them to get
You
married
trap
there.
one woman in there, and she deserved it. So, just trap one
Exactly.
lady.
Exactly.
Um, so that is our kickoff for our haunted series. We're going to be doing all kinds of haunted things. We're going to go underwater, Kat's favorite place, next week.
Love
We're
it.
going to be talking about sunken cities and haunted houses under the water. And honestly, it's pretty sad. But it's going to be cool. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about the deep house. So we're going to be going around, maybe leaving our house to do things in October so that we can share
I will
about some
say,
haunted places.
if you
I
see me,
mean,
no, you didn't. But
yeah,
I'm gonna be outside for a little bit, so that's gonna be exciting.
yeah. Also, like Pennsylvania is just haunted. It is just
Yeah.
full, like where it's old, right? Like
Mhm.
Pennsylvania here, it was the first, right? Philadelphia is a founding city, so there's a lot of stuff here. There's a
Mhm.
lot of first.
All the
There was
first
a
murders
first
happened
public.
here.
Oh yeah, first public hospital happened here. First fire volunteer fire department happened here. First military the Marines happened here. Like
For Americans,
so
yeah.
Yeah,
USA.
yeah, for America. So there's a lot of history, and I am excited to learn a bit more of it. Please share with us your favorite haunted houses.
Tell
If you
us.
watched Rose Red, tell me about it. I'm sure you're like, those effects were really cheesy, and I'm like, I don't care.
Oh, God.
I love seeing the skeletal woman. She's like, "What are you doing, Emery?" And she's like smoking. Like, oh, I can't. It's so bad, and I love it so much. And the songs get stuck in my head. It's beautiful, and yeah. So stay tuned for some really fun and goofy haunted things as
Nice.
we continue this journey throughout October.
Yeah.
And don't get married.
Delete your kids.
Like kids.
Yeah.
Or they'll get lost in your house. That's
Yeah.
huge and
The
unnecessary.
house will eat them.
Honestly, you all deserve it if you have a house that's big enough to get eaten in.
Yeah. I
So you
yeah.
have regular
My
stuff.
This is my whole argument. Why we need giant house, we don't. That's the answer.
You don't actually, Sarah. What are you doing?
You need just
Okay,
a house for you and the people you like. Well, then you
so you
stop.
can watch. Yeah, yeah.
And you give
Or
the
like,
houses to other people. And you're like, wow, look at that. Everyone has a house instead of being homeless.
yeah.
Look how
Especially if
great
you're
the
gonna be
world
in
could be.
California. You're gonna be in California, and you're not gonna have. You have this big house with the houseless population that they have. You're not gonna put the people in the house.
Of
They mean
course
they
not,
deserve
because
a
they don't care.
they just honestly, they deserve a better house, first of
Yeah, they
all.
deserve a house that
Second of
doesn't
all,
have
a
doors, but they
practical
need
one.
doors.
Yeah, they need a house that's for real.
House that works.
Um, that all the things do what it's supposed to do, but they deserve a house, period.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.